Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Finding Me in the ITV networks. I would like to go to a very short clip to introduce my guest to all of you viewers so that you can understand and perhaps get an idea of the dynamic personality that is with me today and appreciate the conversation that we have thereafter. And when we come back into the studio, I would like to welcome Ms. Shiva and engage with her. So I'll see you after the video clip.
To deal with this, it was called a Korean company, POSCO. When we went into the details, it's owned by Wall Street. It's owned by Mr. Buffett, who comes to try and teach us in India how to give, and we wrote an open letter to him saying, Mr. Buffett, stop grabbing first, then
Warren
teach us.
Buffett was there with the Gates and with others talking to Indian investors about how to encourage investment in their country.
Absolutely. And of course, countries like India are seen as the place for investment, whether it be Walmart, whom we've stopped so far from having its retail outlets, or the Cargills who would like to totally control the food economy of 1.2 billion people. We might be poor, but we still have to eat. And what could be a more secure market than getting the basics? We stopped the privatization of Delhi's water supply, where again corporations wanted to sell us our own water back to us at 10 times the price. So no matter which direction you look, the corporations are trying to appropriate people's economies, destroy democracy, because which democracy would say, take away our seeds, give us more nuclear, give us more toxics? These are illusions that are being marketed in order for people to hand over the power to decide what we eat to a handful of corporations. This is not being done to improve the food supply or improve nutrition. It's being done to control food, because without genetic engineering, companies could not have patented seed. A seed patent means the right to exclude anyone from making, using, saving, developing the patented product. If it's a machine, it doesn't matter. If it's an aeroplane, it doesn't matter. Boeing makes aeroplane, a local citizen does not. But when it comes to seed, if Monsanto gets a patent right to seed, then a farmer saving seed is treated like a thief, an intellectual property thief. A farmer whose field is contaminated by a genetically engineered seed that Monsanto has sold through pollination or wind, that farmer who is a victim of pollution is also treated like a thief, because when seed becomes intellectual property, the existence of the genetically engineered traits anywhere without the patent holder's permission is treated like theft.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome. I'm sure you thoroughly appreciated that, and because it's a conversation that's not often heard in mainstream media, and such discussions are often not shared with us. So Ms. Shiva, I would like to say thank you very much for being here, for making this time for me. I mean, it's a great opportunity and honor to have you here.
Pleasure.
Okay, you are fondly known for placing women and ecology at the heart of modern development discourse. And initially, I know you were trained as a physicist. Then you shifted your focus to interdisciplinary research. And then you looked at science, technology, environmental policy, and today you're known as a gender and an environmental activist. Okay, so placing women and ecology in the heart of modern development, why was that necessary, and in what angle are you focused on?
Well, women and ecology are at the heart of everything that sustains us. If there wasn't an earth, we wouldn't be alive. If women didn't work as hard as they do, nobody would be getting food, nobody getting clothes, nobody would be getting clean, children wouldn't be looked after, old people wouldn't be looked after. I realized as I started to work more and more on ecological questions and got involved with this beautiful movement that started in my region, in the Himalaya, where women said, we're going to hug the trees. You'll have to kill us before you kill the trees.
Wow.
And this was in the 70s, 40 years ago. Okay. I was a student, but I became a volunteer because I came from this area. I had personally witnessed the disappearance of our forests. My father had been a forest conservator, and I trekked those forests and they were disappearing. So as a volunteer, I helped the movement mainly in writing, because the women were totally knowledgeable,
Okay.
but they didn't write.
Okay.
So I became their
script,
translator, their writer, their promoter. And the deeper I got into issues, I realized we had a development discourse which totally left nature and women out, even though they carried the world. Development and growth measure what is commodified, what is sold, what is in the global marketplace. And in the definition of growth, if you produce what you consume, you don't produce.
That's right.
And on the basis of growth, women don't work. On the basis of growth, nature is dead. And our paradigm of reductionist Cartesian science has reinforced this idea of women don't work, nature is dead. And nature for me is very much alive, and women work harder than anyone else.
And women are perhaps the most alive.
And the most
aspect,
alive, the
yeah.
most intelligent,
Yes.
the most productive. So all the patriarchal categories, all the capitalist patriarchal categories, structures, paradigms, were so blind that I wrote Staying Alive, my first book,
Yes.
centered on women and ecology.
Yes, I know. I want to come back to that particular book because, I mean, Staying Alive has been acclaimed as one of the best books, and I think it launched you into the market. That was in 2002, right?
No, I started to write it
Oh, 1989.
1989.
Yes,
right.
yes. It had
2002 would have been a new edition by a
Right.
new publisher, yeah.
Okay, and sorry, but in 2003 you were identified by Time magazine as the environmental hero. So what brought you to that status? Was it because you revived the entire discourse about nature and nature being alive, or combining this dual role of the fact that both women and nature contribute towards development, and then redefining development, of course, because
Well, I remember the Time magazine cover. It was 2002 because it was written and published for the Earth Summit that took place in Johannesburg.
right.
And Time magazine had taken on the challenge to identify people who were making a difference to the life of the planet. And they had visited us and visited our farm, Navdanya, of course asked me lots of questions. And at the end of this article, on me as an environmental hero, it said, the biodiversity-based innovations that Navdanya is carrying out puts a challenge to the biotechnology industry, which claims to feed the world. But here are ecological ways that produce more, don't harm the earth, put women at the center of production, put women's knowledge of diversity at the center of production. And it was that Time article that inspired Monsanto, through its public relations people, to, at a press conference at Johannesburg during the Earth Summit, to give me what they called the bullshit award for starving the world with organic. What I called it the gift of cow dung. I composted it and did exactly what they didn't want promoted, organic farming.
Okay, talking about Monsanto, I'm really curious now because in South Africa, I think we haven't really opened the discourse completely, or maybe academics are afraid to challenge, afraid to be as outspoken as you are. Maybe they have the knowledge, but I always maintain that in social sciences there is very much a limitation to the kind of research that you get because it's biased, it's controlled by who does the funding, which think tanks you work for, etc. And so I have heard very often, and I mean, I challenge my children because they in the science field. One did food science as well, and I kept on saying, but there's a problem with genetically modified foods or genetically engineered foods. She said, no, mommy, but in the lectures they said it's more resistant, it's better, it will allow for more food growth, more crops, etc. So what is the story on genetically modified or genetically engineered seeds or products of food?
Well, on the issue of genetic engineering and South Africa, I want to mention that when Ila Gandhi was a member of parliament, she had organized a special meeting for me to come to the South African parliament to discuss this issue because it was a very intense debate.
Yes.
And then, of course, suddenly the approvals were given by forces that are totally invisible. Yes. Now, what's the problem with genetic engineering? My background is I was trained as a physicist. I did an interdisciplinary PhD thesis on the foundations of quantum theory, especially the fact that you can't separate things. They're all interconnected.
Right.
Quantum theory tells us that. Ecology tells us that. And yet we have in genetic engineering the continuation of an obsolete model that everything is fragmented, everything is immutable particles. You can just put them together like a Lego set, and you're going to have miracles. The paradigm is wrong, that's the first. Second is, for the first time, you're taking genes that don't belong to that species and introducing it, which will have consequences.
Yes.
All breeding has been wheat with wheat, corn with corn, humans with humans, cows with bullocks and bulls. For the first time, you can put viruses into the plant through genetic engineering. You can put bacteria into the plants. They've put human genes into wheat. They've put scorpion genes into cabbage. All kinds of transfers are taking place.
Right.
The two most prevalent applications are Bt genes from bacteria to produce a crop that is supposed to produce its own pesticide and is supposed to be a pest control technology. The other is herbicide-tolerant genes, also a toxic, that's supposed to control weeds. What is the record in the last 20 years globally? There has been no yield increase because the yield comes from the plant into which the toxic gene is introduced.
Right.
It doesn't get introduced
Into the soil.
and the gene doesn't create the yield.
Right.
The plant creates the yield.
Right.
So the yield story is false. This is not a solution to hunger. The chemical story of reduction of toxics is false because in fact chemical use has gone up. And why has it gone up? In the case of herbicide tolerant crops, it was designed to go up. The same companies that sold the herbicides were now selling seeds tolerant to the herbicide.
Right.
Roundup Ready soya of Monsanto, sales go up. But as a technology, does it work? No, it doesn't control the weeds, it creates super weeds. Half of America's farmlands are so overtaken by superweeds that they are now having to spray Agent Orange, which was used in the Vietnam War, on the fields of the United States, 240. In the case of Bt crops, we've had the longest experience. In India, they came in illegally, had to challenge Monsanto in the Supreme Court of India. They were stopped for a while till they eventually sorted out the approvals. 95% of the cottonseed commercially sold is controlled and owned by Monsanto. Prices jumped 8,000%. Do the poor peasants of India have that kind of money? No. They take credit. Does it work to control pests? No, it's created super pests. It's created new pests. 300% more aphids and jacids. And this is official record. Have the yields gone up? No, they've gone down since Bt. The yields were increasing and now they're going down. The same is the case for Pakistan. The same is the case for Burkina Faso with Bt cotton. Yields did not go up. Farmers get trapped into debt for costly non-renewable seeds, of which 50% of the price originally went as royalty payment, rent collection, straight to Monsanto. And of course, pesticide costs. 13 times more pesticides are being sprayed since the GMOs were introduced. That kind of debt the farmer cannot get out of.
Yeah, and then in the mainstream media, you just hear about suicides by Indian farmers, etc., but you're not given
284,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide. In my view, the most resilient of human beings, because I've grown up in that society, and I've had so much admiration for our peasants, our women, who will survive the worst crisis and come right back.
Yes.
They never give up, but they are giving up because this kind of extortion they can't deal with.
Okay, we have to go to a break, and we'll see you after the break.